There is a number of special considerations if you are applying for a spouse and you're recently married, which for our purposes is less than 2 years, or for a fiancé visa. We have a special category of visas for fiancés. They're not exactly family members, but they will be, is the idea. And so we can issue a visa to someone who's going to marry an American, and they have 90 days from the day they enter the United States to get married. But if you apply for a fiancé visa or a visa for a husband or a wife and you've been married for less than 2 years, the interview is much more in-depth because one of our big concerns is preventing marriage fraud. And it is very difficult for us because Morocco is a high marriage fraud post. We see a lot of cases coming out of Morocco, and it's not unique. We see this in a lot of countries. I mean, there was a movie in the late 1980s called Green Card, about this, and I'm sure someone got the idea that it's a good way to help out a friend who is trying to come to America, or you can make a little bit of extra money if you marry someone to get a green card. But we are very vigilant about it. So what we want to see with these cases is proof that the relationship is real. And again, there aren't any special magic documents that we look at. It's not like we need to see a stack of pictures exactly this tall and then we'll be satisfied. So when we do an interview for a fiancé or a spouse who's been recently married, we want to know about the relationship, and we ask only, appropriate questions. We don't sort of get into inappropriate details or anything like that. But we want to know, how you decided to get married and how you met and what you like about each other and what you like doing together. And so those are the sorts of questions that we try to ask. We want to get a real sense of what people's relationship is like in making this judgment. And we try very hard to be very fair. It is very difficult work. None of us is terribly excited about having to say no to somebody because we know that there's always a chance that we might be wrong in making a decision. That possibility is always there. But what's also very difficult for us is we have cases where we see relationships that are real on one side. The American citizen thinks the relationship is real, and the person applying for the benefit is really only trying to go to the United States. And that's an even tougher situation for us to see, someone who has invested their heart and their time and years of their life into a relationship that someone else had only entered in order to get a green card. So we try to be very vigilant. We know it's a very difficult process. It's not a pleasant, process to have to spend years sometimes to, go through applying in the first place and then possibly having a case rejected because you couldn't convince an officer the relationship was real, and then having to have the case reviewed and then having another interview. I mean, we know that it's a very difficult process, and we do try as hard as we can to be fair. And we also know that, there are cultural differences. The way Americans decide to get married is not the same as people all around the world. We might date someone for years before we decide to get married, and that's very strange in many cultures where, your parents might introduce you to someone and expect that in a month or two, that you want to get married or not. So we do take that into consideration. We do try to learn as much as we can culturally about what to expect, about what's usual and what's typical. So we do try very hard to be fair, to be aware of the cultural differences, and to only make decisions based on what we see as real evidence. And we try not to bring prejudices about, oh, this is the way we do things in America, so we assume everyone, decides to get married the same way. So that is something to be aware of, to be mindful of. It's it is a more difficult process to apply for a visa for a spouse if you've only been married for a very short time. So, we hate to sort of burden people with that, but we wanted you to be aware of it so that it doesn't come kind of as a surprise. Yes. There are two main points about the diversity visa that I feel like I definitely need to bring up, because we hate to see people go through the process of the diversity visa only to not be qualified. Because it would be so exciting to win the diversity lottery, but then to find out that you can't go because of a small mistake it's heartbreaking, and we hate to turn people down. The number one thing that gets people turned down and is really, unfortunate is if someone is married and they say they're not married in their application, their visa will be rejected. So you have to be honest about your family status. You have to say, I am married, I want to take my spouse and my 2 children. And the big problem we have is people ask someone else to fill out the form for them, and they just sort of check whichever boxes, and they're not very careful about that. I hate doing it, but I've rejected cases where, you know, it was just a mistake. But the law doesn't allow me to issue a visa to someone who's married if they said that they were single, or who's single and said that they were married. So they have to make sure that they fill that in accurately. The other point is, it's almost impossible to qualify for the diversity visa if you do not have a BOC. There are very few categories of people who will show that they have the necessary job skills to qualify without a BOC. But generally speaking, if someone does not have a BOC, they cannot, you know, get a visa in the diversity visa process. The good news is that if people apply early enough, they have a chance, and they don't have a BOC, to sit for that year's BOC exam. They just need to schedule their interview after the exam. They can take it as a free candidate. And we have had applicants do that. They found out they won the diversity visa, you know, in October, and then they study really hard and they sit for the BOC that June. And they find out that they pass in July, they make their appointment for August, and they get to go to America in September. So that's fantastic. We love it when that happens. But if someone does not have a BOC, otherwise it is almost impossible for them to qualify. And I hate it when I have to turn away a candidate, you know, who's put all this time and is so excited about going and has paid a lot of money, frankly. I hate to turn them down because they don't have a BOC, but it is part of the law. And now, you know, probably one of the more important parts of my talk, what can you do to help family members? Like I said before, if you're paying for their travel, provide evidence of how you're going to pay. A pay stub, you know, your tax returns, a W-2, anything like that, a bank document, you know, anything like that to show that you have sufficient fund to pay for their travel is very helpful. If your family members don't speak English, if you can help them with the DS-160, that's the online application. The application can be read in other languages. It can be read in Arabic or French, but it has to be answered in English. So people often will go to cyber cafes to fill out the forms. But if you can help them, that's terrific, because the more accurate and complete the form is, the easier it is for us to make good decisions in the cases. You can find out all this information about the form, how to make an appointment, what to expect at the interview at the website www.casablanca.usconsulate.gov. We have some pamphlets, and the website and our email address are on there. Which are probably the 2 most important pieces of information: the website, where you can find all of the forms, and our email address, where if I didn't answer your question tonight or you think of a new one, you can send us an email, and we will answer it. We will try to answer your questions as best we can. In terms of telling your family members what they can expect at an interview, the interviews are all conducted in French or Arabic. All of us officers speak either French or Arabic. We also have local staff who are all Moroccans. And so if for some reason we're still having trouble, we even have Moroccan staff who speak Berber. We have 3 different Berber dialects covered. So we're usually okay. We can conduct an interview. During the interview, regardless of the type of visa, your family member is going to be asked about the purpose of their travel, whether they have family in the United States, how long they intend to stay, and we'll ask for the non-immigrant visas, you know, what their ties are to show that they're going to come back. If we don't have enough information, sometimes we do ask applicants to bring us something. A lot of times, you know, they'll say, oh, I'm paying for the trip myself, I didn't bring my bank documents. We might ask them to come back, and they don't need to pay another fee or make another appointment. They can just drop off the documents. Generally speaking, when we issue a visa, it'll be ready in 2 business days. So we'll get their passport from them at the interview. 2 days later, we will give them back their passport with the visa in it. Some cases, however, do require administrative processing. We don't have any control over that in Casablanca. I wish I did. I wish I could make the process go faster. I know it's really frustrating, but we do the best we can. If someone's reason for travel is urgent, they need medical care, they're visiting a family member who's very sick, they're traveling and their school is going to start soon, we will find ways to push the administrative processing along. We don't want someone to miss a semester of school because of the processing. We don't want someone to not be able to visit their brother in the hospital because of the processing. So if that is the case and someone needs, you know, their administrative processing to be expedited because of a real humanitarian issue, they should email us at nivcasablanca at state.gov. That's the email address in the pamphlet. And we will do everything we can to help out with that. And that is my presentation. I hope that this has been helpful, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.